Draft day was definitely a mixed result amongst Kings fans, with the only real notable addition being Keegan with the 4th overall pick. But following the draft, the Kings were quick to sign Alabama guard Keon Ellis to a 2-way contract, and for those of you who followed my pre-draft coverage on potential second round prospects, you may know that I have been Keon's biggest fan and extremely high on him throughout the process. So when he ended up in Sacramento, I was stoked and irrationally excited for an undrafted free agent, but I'm here today to help further push this Keon Ellis agenda to those who may not be as familiar with him. Sacramento brought Keon in for a workout pre-draft, and they must have really liked what they saw. This is actually the first rookie undrafted free agent Monty McNair has ever given any sort of guaranteed contract to, which leads me to believe they're quite high on him as well. Keon was the projected second rounder, but ended up slipping all the way out of the draft entirely. Ellis is your prototypical 3-and-D 2 guard, but with an extra emphasis on D. I've joked around with it a bit on Twitter, but I also mean it when I say that Keon has that dog in him. He possesses a relentless motor and plays with the kind of energy that is contagious. You'll never have to worry about things such as effort, mental lapses, or lack of concentration. Ellis is always engaged and always active. Keon is pretty much all of the things you look for in a perimeter defender at the point of attack. Not only does he have elite lateral quickness, he has the deceleration or start and stop ability you look for as well. To go along with his extremely active hands, he has all the makings to be a pest on the defensive end. This is some absurd footwork and balance on display here. Starting off with sliding his feet, he's forced to go into a full sprint for one step, then decelerate and stop on a dime. Watch his right foot plant and turn to get his hips realigned. Not only does this show how quick his hips and feet are, he still has the presence of mind to avoid contact when the offensive player leans in trying to draw a foul. A little bit of everything and a lot of activity on this play. A quick dig on the drive, then a disciplined closeout on the swing. Plants his front foot, lunges, and ends up cutting off multiple drives. On the kick out, Keon is forced to switch onto the ball handler, this time having to defend the point of attack in a high pick and roll. He does a good job of staying in the play and stays attached, ultimately bothering the shot with his length. Isaiah Wong is one of the shiftiest guards in college basketball, and Keon is basically operating here on an island. On the initial step back, Keon slips and gets his feet crossed up in an awkward position. For most defenders, this play would effectively be over. But somehow Keon regains balance here and gets enough momentum to prevent Wong from ever turning the corner on him. Isaiah still makes a shot here, but this is phenomenal from Keon in terms of effort and recovery. As dominant as Keon is defensively, his footwork is pretty unconventional for the most part. He's super bouncy and has many of these mini jump stops in his movement that it seems offensive players could easily expose him by attacking his front foot. There's also a lot of exaggerated motions in one direction and he gets cross-footed quite a bit. But even with this style, there aren't any major lapses in his balance and he's always under control despite how wonky or awkward his footing gets. Plus his quick hips allow him to easily change directions off of hard plants and he has the elite sprint speed when recovering from behind. You can find plenty of players who have the ability to slide their feet well defensively, as well as guys who have a high top speed. What separates Keon is his slightest sprint transition, and this just goes back to acceleration and deceleration, which you've already seen a ton of by now with Keon. But he's going to be asked to defend elite ball handlers at the NBA level, so this type of movement will be what makes his career. Think about guys like Trae Young and Darius Garland. Of course they're great with the ball and 3-level scores, but they combine that with elite change of pace and great change of direction. It's virtually impossible to expect defenders to stay in front of guys like them by sliding their feet. You'll need top tier sprint speed in order to contain them, but also be able to decelerate and provide somewhat of a counter to step backs and pull-ups. Keon is anticipating a screen here, so his hips are opened up slightly to the side, which gives the ball handler a window to attack left. A hard drive triggers Keon to go into sprint mode as the offensive player stops on a dime while also keeping his dribble alive. You again see the plant by Keon and the elite speed in which this allows him to flip his hips. Balance, sprint speed, and deceleration. Can't understate how good Keon is at this. Most of his defensive traits that jump off the page have to do with his lateral quickness or how fast he can flip his hips, but he combines that with extremely active hands, which is why he has the makings of a full-time pest. Alabama will consistently use him to slow down other teams' best guards or even sometimes bigger players, sometimes picking up full court. With 1.9 steals per game and a 3.4% career steal percentage, for most guards that number comes from off-ball and jumping passing lanes. Now Keon doesn't necessarily lack in that area, but a very good portion of his steals were actually via on-ball. He looks for strips on drives and he's a true ball hawk, just has a knack for causing turnovers and creating havoc. Keon is going to bother and give problems to whoever he's matched up with, and at least make their job a lot tougher. Every successful team has a ton of guys who have this kind of attitude and energy, and the Kings now have a few types of these players. And like I alluded to earlier, this level of activity translates to playing off ball as well. He's good at reading and jumping passing lanes, and his closing speed is flat out ridiculous. Sometimes he looks like an NFL safety flying across the middle when he makes his breaks on the ball. Keon may not have the elite off-ball instincts as someone like Dante DiVincenzo, but he should project to be a plus defender in this aspect nonetheless. Most of his value will come from on-ball defense anyways. Some of his instincts may go unnoticed in the box score though, like here where he starts off defending the ball handler, then a high screen results in a switch and Keon picks up the roller. The newly generated mismatch at the top results in a blow by, and Keon isn't in a great position initially. He's being sealed off by his man, and theoretically it shouldn't even be his assignment to rotate over and stop the ball. But a quick swim move propels himself forward just in time to beat the ball handler at the rim and times his jump perfectly to help save a basket. The main knock on Keon is always his frame, and at about 6'3 or 6'4 and an extremely light 170 pounds, he will definitely have to add some weight and get quite a bit stronger to withstand the physicality of the NBA. Comparing Keon to Davion, for example, a lot of what makes Davion the elite defender that he is the immense core strength that he has. It's hard to create space off of Davion playing physical because more often than not, he's going to be stronger than his matchup. Keon on the other hand is super light and can get bumped around quite a bit. This wasn't too much of a factor at Alabama however because his recovery speed and high speed lunges more than made up for his lack of bulk. But on the NBA level, every minor disadvantage will be exposed, so it's important for him to look to add some weight. Keon's frame was probably on display most in the pick and roll. He's all the makings to be an elite screen navigator as well as utilize that recovery speed of his to fight back from behind, but sometimes strong screens could chip Keon a little bit too far off his tracks and therefore loses attachment to the ball handler. When he's able to avoid this blindside contact though, he's a great screen navigator. You can see in some of these clips where Keon's able to get skinny or in some instances go under to avoid contact with the screener altogether. You can see the effort and want to factor here. He stays attached to the screener but moves laterally around him in order to avoid giving up a free shot. Overall, he helps ensure no true advantage is generated by the offense. This is more work against Isaiah Wong. The scouting report is to go under against Isaiah, who is more of a threat driving to the basket. This first screen, that's exactly what Keon does, but you can see how he really looks to avoid any contact with the screener, and that gives Isaiah quite a bit of separation. But Keon covers so much ground on this lunge forward, once Wong picked it up, it didn't even matter. This pitch and chase is used as a rescreen but flipped to the other side, and this time Keon beats Wong to the spot. So 2 pick and rolls where Ellis was able to eliminate any advantage. The last thing defensively, which is also something I mentioned earlier, is his disciplined closeouts. So many players can get their front foot attacked on closeouts, but that really isn't the case with Keon. Defense is all about anticipation, and he's so good at anticipating that first step on drives and being able to beat his man to the spot. Again, going back to the Davion Mitchell comparison, because I know a lot of us Kings fans are familiar with him by now, but this is a skill that Davion's tremendous at. But Mitchell always tends to take it a step further and a lot of times draws offensive fouls because not only does he anticipate, he takes the contact and sells it. We saw this a bit from Keon at Bama, and it's one of my favorite traits in players altogether. Now, it's not to say he's perfect and he can get beat, like here where he's over anxious with his closeout, leaving his feet and allowing the offensive player to get a step on him. But these plays are few and far between, and more often than not, the aggressive approach that he plays with pays off. Now moving over to the offensive side, there isn't too much to talk about. Keon projects to be a spot-up shooter on this end, and that should just about do it for his offensive role. Things can get pretty chaotic when he's asked to create for himself, and it's just not something he's comfortable with doing at all. But unlike Buddy Hield, I don't think that he'll try to be someone that he's not, so I'm not really worried about this at all. But I absolutely believe in Keon's shot and would buy all of the stock in it. He shot about 37% from 3 last season on over 5 attempts per game and is one of those guys who can really catch fire. He was also an 88% shooter from the foul line, which is another encouraging sign that his shot should translate easily. The percentile rankings are also very impressive, where he ranks in the 91st percentile across all jump shots and 90th percentile on spot-up looks. Keon shoots a pretty jumper with a quick trigger who will mainly be effective off the catch. There was also a ton of experience as a movement shooter, and Bama ran some actions to get him looks from deep. He does tend to bring the ball up from his left side even though he's a righty, and there are times where his knees are slightly bent inward and nearly touching at his base. Nothing really concerning though, as even when some of these shots may not look as natural, the results are pretty consistent. I also love what Keon was able to do when attacking closeouts. This is the one instance where you don't mind him putting the ball on the floor. He's smart at attacking when defenders sell out on the shot, and there was a few explosive dunks in here as well. Keon isn't some absurd vertical athlete, but he's definitely a pretty good one and at least quite exciting. Thank you guys as always for staying and watching another one of my breakdowns. It means a lot and I appreciate all the support this channel has been getting recently. I have a lot more content coming soon, and with Summer League and free agency approaching, there should be plenty to talk about. Once again, thank you guys and see you next time.